Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Newshour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour, Prime Minister Modi holds meeting with IBSA leaders, attends third session of G20 Summit in Johannesburg. Prime Minister Modi meets with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to also hold bilateral meetings with counterparts on the sidelines of the G20 Summit. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar conveys India's support for early end to Ukraine-Russia conflict. France, Britain and Germany will meet EU, US and Ukrainian officials in Geneva to discuss Trump's peace plan. Glory for Indian shuttler Lakshya Sen wins Australian Open Super 500 title. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is on a visit to Johannesburg, South Africa for the G20 Summit, is participating in the third session of the summit today. The Prime Minister will speak on a fair and a just future for all, critical minerals, decent work, artificial intelligence. This is the theme of the third and the last session of the summit. Earlier, Prime Minister Modi also participated in the 6th IBSA Summit, the trilateral forum comprising of India, Brazil and South Africa, on the sidelines of the G20 Summit. Discussions focused on enhancing cooperation between the three countries in various fields. Now, this trilateral forum is a major step towards bringing the three major countries of Asia, South America and Africa closer together for cooperation. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also held bilateral meeting with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in Johannesburg on the sidelines of the G20 Summit. The meeting underscored the long-standing friendship between India and South Africa and reaffirmed their commitment to deepening cooperation across multiple sectors. Both the leaders reviewed the current state of mutual and international relations, expressing satisfaction over the progress made in areas such as trade, investment, defense, collaboration and cultural exchange. They emphasized on the importance of strengthening strategic partnerships to address emerging global challenges collectively. Reaffirming their shared vision, both Prime Minister Modi and President Ramaphosa committed to further enhancing the bilateral ties and exploring new avenues for collaboration. Prime Minister has termed Saturday's proceedings at the G20 Summit in Johannesburg as fruitful in a social media post. Prime Minister Modi informed about attending 2 sessions and sharing his views on key issues. He also informed about his productive meetings with many world leaders. He also shared a small video showing the highlights. Elaborating on day one of Prime Minister Modi's participation at the summit, he addressed both the sessions on the opening day, thanking President Ramaphosa for his warm hospitality and for successfully hosting the summit. Addressing the opening session on inclusive and sustainable economic growth, leaving no one behind, Prime Minister appreciated the work done by the group under the South African presidency in the areas of skilled migration, tourism, food security, AI, digital economy, innovation and women empowerment. Prime Minister emphasized that it was time to look at new parameters of development. In this context, he noted that the idea of integral humanism based on India's civilizational wisdom must be explored. Prime Minister also addressed a session on a resilient world, G20 contribution to disaster risk reduction, climate change, just energy transition, food systems. He also appreciated that the disaster risk reduction working group initiated by India is being taken forward. He noted that the approach to disaster resilience should be development-centric rather than response-centric, as exemplified in the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure set up by India. Prime Minister also called for greater collective action on climate agenda to strengthen food security. In the context, he noted the value of millets in promoting nutritional security and environmental sustainability. Prime Minister also sought greater voice for the Global South in global governance structures. In this context, he noted that the inclusion of the African Union as a permanent member of G20 in New Delhi summit was a major step forward, and this inclusive spirit must also be taken beyond G20. Meanwhile, at the summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi elaborated upon India's approach to growth, development and well-being for all, proposing 6 ideas and actions for consideration.
Elaborating India's approach to growth, development and well-being for all, Prime Minister proposed a few actionable for the G20 to consider. These included, number 1, creation of a G20 Global Traditional Knowledge Repository. This would harness collective wisdom of humanity for the benefit of future generations. Secondly, creation of a G20 Africa Skills Multiplier. This program would aim to create a pool of 1 million certified trainers for skilling the youth in Africa. The third, creation of a G20 Global Healthcare Response Team, which would comprise healthcare experts from each of the G20 members and could be deployed to deal with global health challenges in any part of the world. The fourth, establishing a G20 Open Satellite Data Partnership, a program of satellite data in which G20 space agencies would make information available to developing countries for agriculture, fisheries, disaster management, among other activities. Fifth, he also talked about creation of a G20 Critical Minerals Circularity Initiative, an initiative which would foster recycling, urban mining, second life battery projects, and innovation of various types, and help in strengthening supply chain security and develop cleaner pathways of development. And finally, Honorable Prime Minister mentioned about creation of a G20 initiative on countering the drug and terror nexus.
Later, a declaration was adopted at the G20 Leaders Summit, acknowledging the impact of rising geopolitical and geo-economic competition. The leaders confirmed that solidarity, equality and sustainability are key pillars of inclusive growth. A spokesperson for South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa said that the document cannot be renegotiated, noting that it was prepared after months of work and an intense final week. India has ensured that the key outcomes of its 2023 G20 presidency continue to strongly shape the agenda at this year's G20 Summit in South Africa, with the leaders' declaration echoing New Delhi's priorities and amplifying the voice of the Global South. The key outcomes from India's point of view are: terrorism in all its forms and manifestations has been condemned. On technology, the transformative potential of digital public infrastructure has been highlighted. The New Delhi commitments to harness the potential of digital and emerging technologies, including AI, that has been reiterated. There was a push for strong language on empowerment of women and girls, and in this regard, women-led development has been encouraged. The Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure has been recognized in the declaration. The Deccan High-Level Principles on Food Security and Nutrition has been reinforced in context of food security. In health, the role of traditional and complementary medicine has been recognized, echoing the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration. The importance of embracing sustainable production and consumption patterns and mainstreaming lifestyles for sustainable development, or LIFE, has been recognized. India also pushed for a call to reform the United Nations Security Council that improves its representation. And language from the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration finds resonance across the document on various other matters as well. Up on your screens, we have the key outcomes and a declaration that was adopted at the G20 Leaders Summit. And it is, in fact, acknowledging the impact of rising geopolitical and geo-economic competition. Up on your screens, we have the details of the declaration. Also, the participating leaders confirmed that solidarity, equality, and sustainability are the key pillars of inclusive growth. Added to this, India has ensured that the key outcomes of its 2023 G20 presidency continue to strongly shape the agenda at this year's G20 Summit in South Africa, with the leaders' declaration. The highlights of this on your screens, echoing New Delhi's priorities and also giving strength to the voice of Global South. So up on your screens, we have the key outcomes of the G20 declaration. Terrorism in all its forms and manifestations has been condemned. Added to that, on technology, the transformative potential of digital public infrastructure has been highlighted. The New Delhi commitments to harness the potential of digital and emerging technologies, including AI, has been reiterated. Women-led development has been encouraged. The Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure has also been recognized in the declaration. Talking of health, then the role of traditional and complementary medicine has been recognized, and this was also put forth in the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration. The importance of embracing sustainable production and also consumption patterns and mainstreaming lifestyles for sustainable development, that is LIFE, has been recognized. All right, our correspondent Amritpal Singh joins us from Johannesburg. Amrit, just a while back, we told our viewers about the highlights of the G20 declaration. Prime Minister at present is participating in the third and the last session at the G20 Summit. But before that, we also saw Prime Minister hold meetings with his counterparts at the 6th IBSA Summit. Get us more as to what all was taken on the table when we talk of the 6th IBSA Summit between the leaders.
All right, so this morning started with the bilateral meeting, a very significant bilateral meeting between President Ramaphosa and Prime Minister Modi. This meeting was significant from the point of view, of course, because South Africa holds the presidency. What we saw, what you were listing out in the leaders' declaration or the Johannesburg declaration, what India started at New Delhi, the outcomes of New Delhi were taken forward at Johannesburg and consolidated on that. Say climate financing was, there were targets put to it. It was quantifiable. So in a way, the agenda of the Global South is clearly stamped on the leaders' declaration at Johannesburg, and in which New Delhi played a significant role. And I think when the two leaders met, they reiterated to strengthen the bilateral relationship, of course, but also take coordinated positions and keep the momentum alive to see that G20 remains focused on the development agenda, on the priorities, concerns and aspirations of the Global South, and does not slip back into a global north-driven grouping, because next year the presidency goes to the United States. Of course, things will be different from what they have been in the past 4 years, because the presidency does have the leverage to impact the outcomes. So, these leaders coming together signifies that they are expressing solidarity within the grouping, and it's a signaling to the grouping. Bilateral relations were, of course, discussed, how India could partner and strengthen with South Africa, and not just South Africa, by extension the whole African continent. If you remember, yesterday in a polar side with the president of Angola, who's also the president of the African Union, the two sides had reiterated India's commitment, and also the Prime Minister's 6 proposals, including healthcare initiatives or skilling initiatives for Africa. 1 million certified trainers for the continent of Africa in the next decade signifies the importance India attaches to the African continent. So that figured between in the talks between the two leaders. Then it was followed by IBSA. Now, IBSA it was a very significant meeting from two perspectives. One, Preeti, because this is happening after more than a decade at the leaders level. The foreign ministers have been talking to each other. This is significant because this is happening on the margins of the G20, whose leaders' declaration clearly factored in the concerns of the Global South. Now, these 3 countries, President Lula representing Brazil in the Latin American continent, President Ramaphosa representing a big country of the African continent, a big leader of the Global South, and India, of course, as the leader of the Global South, and also a major power in the Asian continent. So the 3 leaders, I think, at that meeting touched upon a whole range of issues, including taking developmental concerns, keeping the focus on that, reform of multilateral institutions, including multilateral banks, the issues on the finance track, especially restructuring of debts, the debt vulnerability, climate financing, climate combat financing. So all this would have come up for discussion. And I think the world would have taken notice, especially the developed countries in the G20 would have taken the significance of IBSA leaders summit on the sidelines of the G20 summit would not have been lost on the Western leaders who are here. Keir Starmer, though, left last evening, but he was here. Emmanuel Macron is still here. So the leaders of the developed world would have taken note of that. America in particular, who is absent from this meeting, would have taken note, because the signaling solidarity amongst the Global South is a strong signal to the Americans that though the Global South does not want a confrontational approach with the West or the United States in particular, but we've seen acrimony over tariffs, coercion that America under the presidentship of Donald Trump has resorted to, and if they collaborate, and the message the Americans would be getting is very clear, that their sitting out of the G20 does not affect the grouping. Though the Americans haven't gone to the extent of pulling out, or there's no such possibility that exists, or weakening the grouping of G20. But if President Trump's assessment of by boycotting G20 at this level would affect outcomes. I think today's meeting and yesterday's declaration would have sent that message across very, very clearly. Preeti.
All right, Amrit, you stay with us. At this point, we're joined in by Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. He's former senior diplomat. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on DD India Newshour this afternoon. Our correspondent Amrit joins us from Johannesburg, and he, in detail, explained to us the day's proceedings so far in South Africa. But I would want you to evaluate for us how has been India's participation so far, with Prime Minister suggesting 6 points at the G20 Summit. How do you evaluate the performance of India?
Yeah, thank you very much, Preeti, for having me. I think as Amrit has very in detail and comprehensively explained, I think the participation of India has been very proactive, and in terms of ideas and vision for the G20, it has been very seminal, as was to be expected. You know, there were very many commentaries saying that, you know, since several of the major global leaders like Donald Trump, like Xi Jinping, like Mr. Putin, they are not going to be present. So the responsibility and the significance of Prime Minister Modi's participation increases. My view has been, Preeti, that India has always been a very important voice, a very important player, particularly over the last 3-4 years that we've seen the cycle of 4 countries taking the mantle of the presidency of G20, developing countries, members of the Global South. And in that, particularly the presidency of India has been very significant, has stood out for a variety of reasons. You know, the first of that I could say is that after Indonesia, because during the time of Indonesia in 22, that was the time when Russia-Ukraine conflict had just taken place. And rather than focusing on the economic issues, on the economic agenda, the whole year was literally spent on how to get a formulation in the final declaration which would be acceptable to everyone. And that also solution was provided by India by, you know, what the Prime Minister had told Mr. Putin in Samarkand on the sidelines of the SCO summit in September, that this is not an era of war. By using that formulation, I think we were able to get over that hump and able to get a final declaration. But after that, the real work started, and the real work was done by India. The heavy lifting was done by India when right within the first 10-12 days, we started with the first Voice of the Global South Summit on the 12th and 13th of January. And that is basically, you know, what Amrit has also been speaking about, that, the 2 summits that took place after that, one in Rio de Janeiro, that is last year, and now in Johannesburg, they have taken forward the Indian agenda. So, you know, we've been discussing on your channel in great detail as to what the final declaration, you know, it has a huge imprint of what India launched, India initiated, India started, whether it is in the area of climate justice, it is in the area of debt, it is a total focus on the aspirations and concerns of the Global South as far as the whole issue of terrorism is concerned, multilateral development banks, how they should move forward in terms of taking care of the interest, the debt burden, the debt vulnerability of developing countries, how that needs to be dealt with in terms of the women-led development growth. So across the board, the imprint of India cannot be missed in terms of also the importance of traditional medicines, how that needs to be done. And along with that, what Prime Minister Modi has done is he has given 6 more new initiatives, fresh initiatives, and basically in terms the focus of most of them also is on developing countries, how the competence, the capacities and capabilities of the Global South countries, how that can be increased. So, to sum it up, I think India's imprint is very, very clear, and India is also drawing a roadmap for the future as to how the G20 countries should go forward. And I think this message has, Preeti, gone out to the global north, to the developed countries, that they cannot grow, they cannot prosper unless they take the global south countries also along with themselves.
Yes, that brings me to the next question. So you're talking of global south, and Amrit also very, comprehensively explained to us what does the 6th IBSA summit mean to the world happening on the margins of the G20 summit. Three very prominent countries of the global south coming together. How does the world look at it? And also for these, these respective three countries of global south, when they come together, what is the potential, what is the caliber when these three countries come together on this global page? Added to that, another priority for them is not to come forth as an alternative force to the global north.
Yeah, I think in addition to the fact that all these countries, these three countries, are very significant, are very prominent members of the global south, I think we also need to remember that these are all democratic countries. And three democracies coming together, I think that has a significance of its own. Because democracy at the moment is under, I'll not say it's under attack, but it's a little on the back foot because there are authoritarian and autocratic countries around the world. Without my naming it, I'm sure your viewers will understand and appreciate, who are saying that democracies have failed, democracies have not been able to deliver the right results as far as improving the living conditions of the people is concerned, and the alternate model that they are proposing, that is of autocracies, is better suited to bringing improving the conditions of the people. And I think countries like India have definitely proven that democracies can deliver, democracies are successful, and the fact that these three countries are coming together. If I may just add as an aside, that when BRICS came into being, and BRICS is only two more countries, that is Russia and China, then there was an attempt by China particularly saying that, IBSA is already included in BRICS, so it doesn't really need to exist as a separate entity, as a separate organization, body. But India was very particular that I think democracy is a value. It's a very important value which we need to cherish, which we need also to nourish. So I think that is number one, that all these three are democracies. Also, these three countries are growing. They are, emerging economies, and they are literally leaders of the global south, and the leadership has been palpable. It has been evident over the last 3 years, definitely, when one after the other they have taken the mantle, at the helm of affairs as far as G20 are concerned, and they have taken forward the concerns, anxieties of the G20. So I think these countries coming together, the leadership coming together after a decade, I think that sends out a very strong message. Particularly, I think it would be because if you look at the United States, at the current moment, the imposition of tariffs on India has been 50%, the highest in the world. Imposition of tariffs on Brazil, highest in the world, 50%. Mr. Trump has refused to come to South Africa because of the alleged violation of human rights and the genocide of white Afrikaners, which the South African president has completely rejected this argument. So the point I'm making is that the United States relations of that country with these three countries are not all that good, and definitely need to be better. So under the circumstances, these countries coming together and engaging with all the other countries of the global north, all of them have been there, whether it is the United Kingdom, France, although there have been these are challenging times for Europe also. There's a challenging time for Japan also in terms of its relations with China. But that notwithstanding, these countries have recognized the significance and importance of the G20 and have made themselves available. They have come here.
Right.
So there are bridges of cooperation and collaboration being constructed between the global north and the global south.
All right, I'll take that forward to Amrit. Now, Amrit, such forums talk of collaboration, as Sir also put forward. But then I would want to understand from you, how difficult is it for the nations to talk of, collaboration on the global page, at the same time taking forward their domestic interests? Now, the countries which are participating back home, they have their respective interests as well. On such a, on a global forum like this, G20, what does it mean? How binding are are the decisions or the points in the declaration which you just read out to our viewers? How binding is that for that to be continued to be taken to the next presidency?
The decisions of the G20, the outcomes are not binding on the member nations. They may they may reflect in the leaders' declaration. They may decide, but it's not binding. And often we've seen nations fall short of the commitments that they make at such summits. And that's a problem with most multilateral, groupings. Because, as you rightly said, that individual interests vary within the grouping of G20. The more developed countries, the developed countries will have their own interests, their own agenda. The global South countries have a different agenda, and that's what how it works at between countries at the multilateral fora. What the countries put their political weight behind, they collaborate, they cooperate with each other because their interests coincide. So within the G20, the 20 most powerful economies or the 20 largest economies will have something in common. They will agree to things on things that are affecting them collectively. They will take collective stance on things they do not see eye to eye. That consensus does not emerge. That's left outside the outcome document, etc. But the fact remains that within the grouping, smaller groupings emerge as, say, for example, they've been able to push the agenda of the Global South, and in the Johannesburg outcome or the declaration, Johannesburg Declaration, the stamp of the Global South's priorities is clearly evident. So that's how it works. But, or even say IBSA. In IBSA, it was, IBSA wasn't taking off. The general critique was that with the coming of the BRICS, IBSA had lost its relevance. But we know when it comes to China, China has its own priorities, which may be very different from the large priorities of the Global South. So there are differences, and therefore the relevance of IBSA and the importance of this leaders meeting taking place here in Johannesburg. So within the grouping, smaller groups collaborate to protect and propagate their interests. And so, Preeti, that's how it works.
All right, Amrit, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those inputs, and thank you so much, sir, for joining us with your insights on DD India Newshour. We were joined in by Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. He put forth his reading of the G20 Summit and the takeaways so far. He analysed for us the declaration, and we also had inputs coming in from our correspondent Amrit, joining us from Johannesburg, getting us the latest from there. Earlier, Prime Minister Narendra Modi held bilateral meeting with South African President on the sidelines of the G20 Summit. Sharing pictures of the meeting on social media, Prime Minister Modi said, and I quote him, "Had an excellent meeting with President Cyril Ramaphosa during the G20 Summit in Johannesburg. We reviewed the full range of India-South Africa partnership, especially in boosting linkages of commerce, culture, investment and diversifying cooperation in technology, skilling, AI, critical minerals and more. Congratulated President Ramaphosa for South Africa's successful G20 presidency." You're watching DD India Newshour. We're heading for a short break. Stay with us.
Jharkhand will mesmerize you with majestic nature, rich heritage and colorful culture.
Hello. Johar. It fits perfectly.
Thank you.
Full workout हो गया.
Ready?
Postcards from Jharkhand on National Geographic.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India Newshour. Let's get you more updates. The national security advisors from E3, that is France, Britain and Germany, would meet European Union, US and Ukrainian officials in Geneva on Sunday for further discussions. The meeting comes after European and other Western leaders on Saturday said US peace plan was a basis for talks to end Russia's conflict in Ukraine, but needed additional work. Ukraine and the allies are trying to figure out a coordinated response to Donald Trump's demand for Ukraine to accept his 28-point peace plan with Russia by Thursday. Washington's plan, which endorses key Russian demands, was met with measured criticism from many US allies. Leaders sought to balance praise for Trump's attempt to end the fighting with recognition that some terms in his proposal are unpalatable for Kiev. India once again reiterated its support for an end to the ongoing Russia and Ukraine conflict. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar had a telephonic conversation with his Ukrainian counterpart, Andriy Sybiha, last evening. Sharing a post on X, the minister wrote, and I quote him, "Appreciate his briefing on the ongoing developments related to the Ukraine conflict, reiterated India's support for an early end to this conflict and the establishment of an enduring peace." Meanwhile, Trump said that his current proposal for peace in Ukraine is not his final offer. He told reporters that it needs to end one way or another. However, said a no when asked if this was his final offer.
No, not my final. No, we'd like to get the peace. It should have happened a long time ago. The Ukraine war with Russia should have never happened. If I were president, it never would have happened. We're trying to get it ended. One way or the other, we have to get it ended. So well, then he can continue. Then he can continue to fight his little heart out.
Meanwhile, Washington on Saturday insisted that its Ukraine proposal to end Ukraine-Russia conflict is indeed an official US policy. The clarification from Rubio came after a group of senators said that they had been told by Rubio that the draft, which one described as a Russian wish list, did not reflect Washington's position. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in a social media post, stated that the 28-point proposal for peace in Ukraine was authored by Washington. He said that the proposal is based on input from both Russia and Ukraine. Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says that India and Israel may soon conclude the first phase of their free trade agreement. He indicated that the entire FTA could be finalized in 2 stages as discussions progress. Goyal reported strong enthusiasm during his meetings with Israeli ministers. Israel's agriculture minister expressed interest in collaborating with India on advanced farming technology. He also noted that Israel's finance minister welcomed the completion of the bilateral investment treaty. Piyush Goyal said his visit has created a solid base for structured trade talks and deeper economic cooperation.
बहुत ही उत्साह है, कई मंत्रियों से बातचीत हुई है और जो इनकी कृषि के मंत्री है उन्होंने भी इच्छा जाहिर की है कि हम आपस में कृषि क्षेत्र में भी टेक्नोलॉजी को लेके काम करें। उनके वित्त मंत्री से भी बात हुई, उन्होंने संतुष्टि जाहिर की कि बायलैटरल इन्वेस्टमेंट ट्रीटी भी अब एग्जीक्यूट हो गई है दोनों देशों के बीच और मुझे लगता है कि ये एक नए व्यापारिक संबंधों के दौर की शुरुआत है। एक संभावना है कि हम पहला फेज एफटीए का पहले तय कर लें और 2 फेजेस में इस पूरे एफटीए को फाइनल करें।
Let's get you updates related to the recently concluded COP30 in Belém, where India delivered a strong and principled message at the closing plenary, calling for equity, climate justice and fairness in global climate action. Acknowledging the presidency's balanced approach, India welcomed the key decisions adopted at the session. India highlighted progress under the global goal on adaptation, noting that the outcome strengthens equity and acknowledges the urgent adaptation needs of developing countries. India also expressed hope that commitments made in Rio 33 years ago will finally be fulfilled. Welcoming the establishment of the Just Transition Mechanism, India called it a major milestone for advancing climate justice globally and nationally. India thanked the presidency for enabling discussions on unilateral trade restrictive climate measures, saying such measures are increasingly affecting all developing countries and violate principles of equity and common but differentiated responsibilities and perspective. India also emphasized that the burden of climate mitigation must not fall on those least responsible for global emissions. India pledged to work with all parties to ensure climate ambition remains inclusive, just and equitable. It reaffirmed its commitment to science-based, equitable climate action, respect for national sovereignty, and a rules-based global order. India also urged greater global support for vulnerable populations, especially in the global south. Let's get to global weather updates now. In Australia, tropical cyclone Fina loomed off the coast of the Northern Territory for several days before rapidly strengthening to a Category 3 storm. The cyclone brought intense winds overnight, tearing up trees and traffic lights and cutting power. Now, according to local authorities, about 19,000 homes had lost power in the past 24 hours and efforts were being done to restore it. The Darwin airport, which was forced to shut on Saturday, reopened on Sunday. Cyclone Fina is now moving offshore towards Western Australia, and forecasts suggest that it may intensify to a Category 4 storm. The death toll from major flooding in Vietnam has risen to 90, with 12 people still missing after days of heavy rain and landslides. Relentless rain has lashed south-central Vietnam since late October, and popular holiday destinations have been hit by several rounds of flooding. Whole sections of coastal Nha Trang city were inundated last week, while deadly landslides struck highland passes around the Đà Lạt tourist hub. And according to Environment Ministry, several locations on national highways remained blocked due to flooding or landslides, while some railway sections were still suspended. Natural disasters have left 279 people dead or missing in Vietnam and caused more than $2 billion of damage in between January and October. South Korea has fully contained a wildfire in Yangyang, Gangwon province after overnight evacuations and a major firefighting effort. A wildfire that sparked on Saturday evening in Yangyang in Gangwon province was completely contained by around 10:20 a.m., prompted authorities to issue a level 1 forest fire response alert and evacuate hundreds overnight. A total of 326 personnel worked through the night to hold the fire line, and at daybreak, 26 helicopters were deployed to suppress the remaining hotspots. Footage from the Korea Forest Service showed flames racing across a mountainside as firefighters worked to contain the spread. Officials said the blaze burned a roughly 22.5 hectares but did not reach nearby residential zones. The cause of the fire remains under investigation. Spain's Barcelona launched its holiday season with a vibrant light display that drew thousands to the city's streets. A dazzling show lit up the night, delighting both tourists and locals. Iconic buildings, Casa Batlló and La Pedrera, were transformed with colorful projections, creating a striking visual spectacle that marked the official start of the festive season. You're watching DD India News. We're waiting for a short break. Stay with us for all the action from International Film Festival of India. Walmart sets step in South Africa, opening the first outlet and providing 60-minute online delivery service. The Indian holy city of Ayodhya all set for the November 25th flag hoisting ceremony at Ram Lalla Temple.
Can the US launch a bombing campaign against Iran? the Philippines vessel suffered structural damage. The saga of child sexual abuse is the United States China's debt trap strategy. Truth is stranger than fiction. But sometimes hard to uncover. Trust us to tell the truth, unadulterated and pure, of every story that matters to you. You read between the lines, cut the clutter, and connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots at these times with me, only on
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India Newshour. India is set to commission its first Mahe-class anti-submarine warfare vessel in Mumbai on 24th of November. The Indian Navy will induct Mahe, the lead vessel of the Mahe-class anti-submarine warfare shallow watercraft. Built with over 80% indigenous content, Mahe will showcase the country's growing mastery in warship design, construction and integration. The ship is designed to hunt submarines, conduct coastal patrols and secure the nation's vital maritime approaches. Its commissioning reinforces India's commitment to self-reliance in defense manufacturing and expands the Navy's future-ready fleet for underwater threat response. Indian Navy's INS Savitri reached Port Victoria, Seychelles as part of its deployment in the Indian Ocean region. INS Savitri, an offshore patrol vessel of the Indian Navy, arrived at Port Victoria during its operational deployment in the Indian Ocean region, reflecting the strong maritime partnership between India and Seychelles. The ship conducted expert exchanges and carried out joint exclusive economic zone surveillance with the Seychelles Coast Guard to strengthen maritime security and enhance interoperability. India also handed over critical spares to support the Coast Guard's operational readiness. The Indian naval ship INS Sayadri, an indigenously built stealth warship of the Indian Navy, as part of its ongoing operational deployment, participated in bilateral exercise Ausendex alongside HMAS Ballarat of the Royal Australian Navy. The warships and aircraft of the two navies conducted intense joint naval drills and operations in the Northern Pacific. The exercise is aimed to significantly boost interoperability and deepening strategic partnership between the two maritime nations. Day 4 of the ongoing International Film Festival of India will witness the culmination of the 48 Hours Creative Minds of Tomorrow's challenge. Now, this challenge is a unique challenge that inspires young creative minds and brings forth their talent in front of industry leaders. Apart from that, the red carpet will roll out for films under the category of Indian Panorama, gala premieres and other international features, non-feature and regional cinema. Today is also the second last day of Waves Film Bazaar. Uttar Pradesh's Ayodhya has prepared floral welcome gates ahead of November 25th flag hoisting ceremony at Ram Lalla Temple. The flag hoisting ceremony will be held on November 25th at the sacred Sri Ram Janmabhoomi Temple. After the flag hoisting ceremony, the main construction work of the temple will be completed. After this, the temple will be fully open to the devotees. Currently, devotees are only allowed access to the Sanctum Sanctorum and the first floor. Let's get you updates from the world of business now. Walmart opened its first store in South Africa on Saturday, marking the US retail giant's debut on the African continent as it seeks a stake in the competitive market. The store attracted hundreds of shoppers who queued for hours to access the retailer's everyday low prices and a range of international products not widely available in the country. Many customers were also seeking early Black Friday deals. The store has created around 80 new jobs and collaborated with 15 local small and medium-sized enterprises, contributing to the local economy. The store will also introduce a 60-minute online delivery service. Updates from the world of sports now. Indian shuttler Lakshya Sen ended a long drought of titles, clinching the Australian Open Super 500 title at Sydney. The world number 14 defeated Japan's Yushi Tanaka in straight games in a one-sided final 21-15, 21-11 on Sunday. The Indian shuttler had an eventful week, defeating compatriot Ayush Shetty and Cho Tien Chen in hard-fought matches en route to the title clash. Now, this is Sen's third Super 500 title, and he converted his second final of the year after losing Hong Kong Open. India's Abhinav Deshwal wins gold in the 25 meters pistol men's event at Deaflympics in Tokyo on Sunday. He equaled the world record and Deaflympics record as well, holding his lead despite a poor final shot. Korea's Lee won the silver, while Fomin Seri of Ukraine took away the bronze. Chetan Hanmant Sapkal finished 5th in the final. India lifted the inaugural Women's Blind T20 World Cup after a convincing 7 wickets win over Nepal in Colombo. Chasing a target of 115 runs, India reached 117 runs for 3 in 12.1 overs to seal the title in commanding fashion. Karuna Kumari set the tone with a brisk 42, rotating the strike well and finding gaps regularly. Phula Sarain kept the momentum going with an unbeaten 44, guiding the chase with calm footwork and steady shot selection. Their efforts ensured that India stayed ahead of the required run rate throughout the innings. Nepal had put up 114 runs for the loss of 5 wickets after recovering from early setbacks through a steady partnership in the middle overs. But the total provided insufficient. In fact, it proved insufficient against an Indian side that remained unbeaten in the tournament. All-rounder Senuran Muthuswamy struck his first Test century to see South Africa to a commanding position on day 2 of the second match against India in Guwahati. The left-handed Muthuswamy began the day on 25 and he went on to frustrate the Indian bowling with patience and grit. He reached his 100 in 192 balls off pace bowler Mohammad Siraj. Muthuswamy fell for 109 runs and shared a partnership of 97 runs with Marco Jansen, who quickly slammed a quick-fire half-century. The visitors were at 471 runs for the loss of 9 wickets. The tourists are in hunt for their first series victory in India in 25 years after they won the opener of the 2-match series. Skipper Shubman Gill is set to miss the upcoming 3-match ODI series against South Africa, with his neck injury expected to take longer to heal. Wicketkeeper batter Rishabh Pant and senior player KL Rahul are in contention for the top gap captaincy, although veteran Rohit Sharma is also part of the squad. Chances of Gill playing the subsequent T20 International Series versus the Proteas from December 9th also look bleak. The BCCI's men's selection committee is expected to announce India's white ball squad on Sunday. 6-time champion Spain edged past Germany 2-1 in the absence of their star player Carlos Alcaraz on Saturday to reach their first Davis Cup final since 2019. Doubles pair Marcel Granollers and Pedro Martinez clinched a 6-2, 3-6, 6-3 win over Kevin Krowitz and Tim Puetz in the decisive match. Spain have set up final clash with Italy on Sunday. This will be their first Davis Cup meeting after 19 years, having last faced each other in the 2006 World Group Playoffs when team captains David Ferrer and Filippo Volandri both played. Italy themselves, without world number 2 Yannick Sinner and 8th ranked Lorenzo Musetti, beat Belgium on Friday to reach their 3rd consecutive final. Before we wind up, let's take you to the western Indian city of Rajasthan, where the famous Sambhur Lake offers a stunning sight as thousands of migratory flamingos gathered well beyond their usual season. Known as India's largest inland saltwater lake, the Sambhur Lake typically hosts these birds from October to March. However, due to favorable conditions like unseasonal rains, The lake has seen large flamingo population outside this typical period. That's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. Now, this app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can download the respective QR codes. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.